Hello and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Guild House. This is a weekly podcast where I, your host, Matthew Whitby, sit down with amazing careers of the DMs Guild. And this week, again, it's every week I'm amazed by people who I can manage to convince to come on the show. It's Alex Clippinger. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on because I think we first talked about me doing this back in January, and I said, I need a little time. I got some stuff going on. I need to get a little time to reschedule, and then here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are 4 months later, and
you can say I'm very persistent with these things. Once I sort of said the thing, I'm like, I will wait it out. I've got weeks to fill, and yeah. So no, thank you so much for finding the time to sort of have this chat. So
yeah, definitely.
I think let's not waste time. Let's dive straight into the questions then. So for the people listening who may not be aware of what you do, what sort of products are you known for on the DMs Guild?
Man, and I even got the question beforehand, and I still don't know how to answer it. I do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I would say if you asked other people, it would probably be they'd probably think of things like Tome of the Pact or Face of the Forgotten Realms. A lot of stuff, a lot of projects I'm involved in have a lot of subclasses, a lot of class mechanics. That's more the area I started out in. And over time, I've been trying to do more and more adventure stuff, and sometimes that's related to the new hardcover, and sometimes it's not. It's really about what piques my interest at the time.
And so is it? So you mentioned that when you kind of started, you doing subclasses. When did you first start publishing onto the DMs Guild, and with what product?
It would be 3 years as of pretty much any time this month. I don't remember exactly. I started off by publishing this little one-shot adventure I'd run for some friends, and I just put it up as a pay what you want thing, and I didn't know what I was doing, honestly, which most people don't when they start.
Yeah.
They really have no idea. So like some people reached out, namely Jeff Stevens reached out and said, hey, your stuff, this looks really good. I think you got a lot of good stuff here, and here's some advice for how you can present it better or make it look better, because I was using just the default unmodified guild word template, which is pretty bad.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, the next thing I did was I've been running a long campaign in the High Moor area of the Sword Coast, and wrote like a regional guide for it, and I released that like around the end of May of 2017, and I just kind of kept going from there.
Nice. I think what's kind of interesting is, like, obviously going through your catalog before, because I do my research. You are right, where you have like a complete varied mix. And one thing that is fairly consistent is you do know how to make quite the eye-catching cover. I will give you that. Like, I mean, the fact that was it Tome of the Pact is 9 times out of 10 going to be used in some form of promotional material for the DM stuff.
Right. And that's that has less to do with, it's not like I did the art, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of that was just scouring different websites, and there places like Drive Through RPG have a lot of stock art available. But you also have to look in places like Adobe Stock or Shutterstock is a place I peruse pretty frequently, just trying to see if I can dig up some long buried cool piece of art. I mean, I did the just yesterday, and I found some piece of art, and it just blew my mind. I was crazy excited about it, and I was like, this is perfect for this future project I want to do. And it's always a really fun, it's like a little treasure hunting thing. And then as I've found some success, I'm a few years in, and as I found success, I've felt more and more comfortable with commissioning artists to create covers for products I have released, and I've some stuff that I haven't released yet. And like, that's just, I've been very lucky and very fortunate that I've been able to do that. And I really like, it's a really cool thing to being able to put aside a little bit of the stuff you've made from the guild and say, oh, well, I can use this on this future project. I can really make this cover, I'm not like making a cover work or like finding some art that I guess kind of works for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Um, my most recent projects, I think people have really liked the cover art because um, I'm generally, I feel like I'm getting better at really visualizing, what I want the cover to look like, the vibe I want it to give off, and of course, the most important thing is being able to communicate with the artists that you're working with. And I've been lucky to find some really really cool artists out there who are easy to work with and are really good to work with, which is me describing is like 30%. Them interpreting and doing the work is
Yeah.
70% of a cover.
It's a happy medium of where you almost give them like a stickman drawing, and then you go,
Right,
please
yeah, exactly.
make this pretty, please. No, so I guess I kind of have like two questions, like kind of linked from that. So being around the guild from like 3 years, which is fairly close to like when it first started, because I think it was 2016 that it started.
Yeah, something like that.
Fairly. How have you like personally seen the guild grow or change over the sort of 3 period?
Um, the way the size of the community, the way it engages, the platforms it's engaging on. Um, Back when I started, Twitter was very like it was there, but it wasn't nearly as it's an order of magnitude greater now. So Twitter has become really really big in terms of where creators are talking to each other. Facebook used to be the big thing just because there were a couple of Facebook groups, and there still are some Facebook groups. You're right,
Rest in peace.
on now, and some of them are still there, but I don't see the same level of activity anymore. And I think a lot of people have moved to the unofficial DMsGuild Discord, and with every new way that people are trying to communicate, there's definitely some upsides and there's definitely some downsides. People have asked me, how do you get into collaborations and stuff? And my answer now is like, I rarely do. I mean, apart from trying to push stuff that I have across the finish line by myself, I found it a lot easier. Like, I think I think a lot of the creative community was a little bit smaller on the Facebook groups. But of course, as it's gotten bigger and has moved to a new platform, Discord, if you're not, I mean, some days it feels like if you are not watching that thing 24/7, something's just gonna fly by.
It's very fast moving. It's almost like without having like individual like threads either, you can sort of lose track of conversations across the many things.
And I think I've seen some more and more people who are running projects try to tag groups. Sorry, my dog's one of my dogs is going a little crazy. I've seen more people running projects try to be good about tagging the groups that they're looking for. So I think people are just trying to figure the happy medium out of best practices. How are they going to get the best broad word out? How are they going to attract as many people as possible who want to be part of collaborations? It's a balancing act, and people are getting there.
I think as well with collaborations, the fact it is more enticing to get involved with them. Like once you kind of earlier in your like career, I guess if we can call it that, like make us sound like professionals. But and then obviously once you get sort of more developed and stuff like that, it's going from engaging in a collaboration to learn the process and get your foot in the door to being like, okay, well now I kind of have my bearings of what the landscape is like and sort of moving it from there. And so I remember that whole tangent started off from me saying I have two questions. So part two of that was so again with having like quite a wide varied catalog. You mentioned as well that you're kind of like shifting towards adventures. Is there any reason why like that's kind of like your preferred like type of content to write?
Because I'm not good at them. I mean, like okay. So far, I haven't had people tell me that they hate my adventures or anything. I don't think I'm bad at adventure writing. I'm definitely slower at it. I got into subclass stuff. I really jumped into that stuff more when I started out because for whatever reason, that stuff in particular just really it clicks for me. Tome of the Pact for a while was kind of like my busy work. Like if I was coming up against a wall on some other project, I could go into Tome of the Pact stuff and just I could breeze through the stuff I did with Tome of the Pact. Um, so I know that subclasses for me are something that are easy for me
Mhm.
and that I enjoy doing. And I don't really need more practice on. I can do subclass stuff to, make sure I'm still good at doing subclass stuff, but that's a strength. And adventure writing is not necessarily a weakness, but it's something that I haven't, until recently, I hadn't worked on as much. And I think, you want to be an RPG creator, you got to know how to write adventures.
Yeah.
And like I said, I didn't think I was bad at it. It's just I didn't have that same level of confidence. And so the best way to build up that confidence is to make sure I'm dedicating time and effort to projects that involve a lot of adventure writing. Um, and part of that was focusing on stuff that excited me. Like if I'm excited about running or writing an adventure, it's a perfect excuse for me to work on that stuff. So, some like the Eberron adventures and stuff I've done,
Mhm.
I have like this weird quirky concept or something. I'm like, yeah, cool. This excites me to dive into, X topic or whatever, or like do like a genre twist on a setting or something like that. So, that's the way I'm kind of segueing myself into more adventure writing, just as a thing for me to, build my skills at.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. It's kind of, yeah. I suppose it's like the idea of like having like a utility belt and just being able to be that versatile and be able to sort of right is are useful skills to have. Um, I did want to ask like a particular question about one of your products.
Sure.
Because the Skullport Dragon Swindle,
Mhm.
in particular, I think is a fascinating concept for a product. The idea of like almost like a hardcover reimagining. Um, how like could you talk me through how did you find that? Because obviously it's not like I always say I'm like a smooth brain adventure writer. That's what I do. But how is like what was the sort of inspiration behind that, and how did you tackle like I don't know taking something and just plopping it somewhere else?
I found the overall the concept of Dragon Heist very cool.
Mhm.
Very modular. The way oh, we've got 10 different encounter areas, but you'll face them in different orders in different ways based on your villain. You can face different villains. It seemed like it seemed almost like a linear sandbox in some ways, the way that Dragon Heist was devised. And I'm kind of I didn't know a lot of super deep lore about Skullport. Back when I played 3.5 12,000 years ago, uh, we visited there a couple times. I used it a couple times as a DM.
Mhm.
Went there once or twice as a player. It always seemed like this very cool area. It's very neat to have this kind of evil version of Waterdeep, or like this evil hub
Yeah.
right underneath, this iconic city of Waterdeep. And when Dungeon of the Mad Mage came out, and they said, "Oh, we're going to have Skullport in here," it's like, "Awesome! This is perfect. This is amazing. I can't wait to see what they've done with it." And the answer is, empty it out. There's
Yeah.
really not a lot there. And I understand why. Skullport wasn't the focus of that product, and they couldn't have, or at least they didn't want to have like this very big metropolitan
Mhm.
hub in the middle of their mega dungeon, because I feel like you're going to get distracted doing Skullport stuff
Yeah.
rather than Dungeon of the Mad Mage stuff. Um, but I can't say exactly when it was, but at some point I just had this idea of, man, it'd be cool to combine sort of the spirit of Dungeon of the Mad Mage and Skullport
Mhm.
with the way that Dragon Heist is run. And I kind of started toying around with the idea, and I thought, if I do a sort of Skullport version,
Mhm.
it can't really be a good guy version,
Yeah.
you know. At least like one of the villains, ended up being Ramalia Haventree, and the Harpers ended up being one of the bad guys you can face. And the other two, the Ragmage and the Scumlord and Aboleth, they're evil. Like you are potentially evil people fighting evil. Um, but a lot of the approach that I took to Skullport Dragon Swindle was inspired by a 3.5 campaign I played in
Okay.
way back in the day, where it was an evil party, and the way that that game was run has always been um, my benchmark for like how evil campaigns should be run, because it wasn't go a lot of people think of an evil game as pillage, murder,
Yeah.
rape, and all this, like, all this, do whatever you want and be a terrible person. And our game, we just didn't do that.
Yeah.
But we were evil, and the whole point is, like, you have to be even more careful as an evil party, because good guys will come kick your butt
Yeah.
if you do evil stuff, but bad guys will come kick your butt if you do evil stuff, because they have plans, or like criminal empires or evil schemes, and you running around doing evil things is either messes with their plans, or it's too much attention. They don't like these upstarts. They don't.
Yeah. It,
They're just as likely to hate evil characters as good NPCs are.
it's almost,
So,
as I say, it's almost understated how tough it is to be evil. Like, yeah, you've
right,
got you've got a lot of enemies. Literally
yeah,
everything you
like,
do
I
makes
think,
enemies.
and so I was like this idea that, being an evil party means you might still be fighting bad guys, but you're doing it for your own reasons,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of one of the reasons that, at the end of Dragon Swindle, the way you divvy up loot and things like that, it's like, yeah, everybody, you're in it for the money, but all these powerful factions in Skullport want a slice.
Yeah.
You're end up with, a bit, just like the way that Dragon Heist ends. Dragon Heist is, well, you're expected to give the money back out of the goodness of your heart.
Yeah.
And the end of Dragon Swindle is, you are asked very, very strongly to give a piece to all these different factions. Otherwise, you're going to have all these criminal organizations and things after you.
No,
So,
like I said, I think it definitely stood out because I think, yeah, like you, I do like the Waterdeep Dragon Heist structure. It felt like a breath of fresh air, and it's an interesting way to also tackle replayability, which some other hardcover books don't necessarily have the luxury of. And there seems to be, like, I'm around Twitter and stuff. There's a lot of murmurings about evil campaigns, or just like content for evil. And I think that particularly you've found a good way to tackle it, with just the idea that, like, yeah, I mean, no, I think players do well to look after their own best interests. It just comes naturally to be like, okay, listen, you're a group that know of each other, but you're after yourself only. And that's the kind of the fun, where the fun can have of, like, betrayals and everyone trying to stick together, or just at the end of the day get money. I don't, it's always money. It's just it's something that, like, people can. It's easy to associate evil with money, I think.
can't imagine why. Yeah, but yeah, yeah. I think, like you said, more and more people are talking about evil campaigns. I think we'll see that more as 5e gets into his life cycle. People have played different hardcovers.
Mhm.
Maybe a new hardcover's coming out, and they say, we could buy this campaign. We could do another level 1 to 10 where we save the world. And at some point, there's going to be more and more groups that say, yeah, but could we just, like, be bad guys though?
Yeah.
Like, is there some way that you could make it work where we can kind of not be, like, super good? Which, honestly, if you really look at the actions of a lot of D&D groups, a lot of D&D groups are pretty evil,
Yeah.
or pretty chaotic, to a kind of comical, pulpy action sort of way. So I feel like the dedicated step into an evil party is not necessarily a change in tactics; it's a change in role playing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times the actions that you'll undertake don't really have to be different. It's the conversations you're having, the way you think about what motivates your character, and how they interact in different situations. I'm in a Lost Minds game right now where I've never actually played that module before, but I'm playing a Dragonborn knowledge cleric of Jergal, and he's neutral evil.
Yeah.
And overall, I'm generally agreeable to doing the stuff for the townsfolk, but I am asking the question of, am I being offered enough in exchange?
Yeah.
I'm not risking my life fighting a bunch of orcs and ogres and things like that because I like you.
Yeah.
I've never even been to this town before. I don't care if you're being raided by orcs. I need mutual
Yeah,
motivation.
it's the understanding of like, oh, you need me. I can leave. Like that's all right. You give me an incentive to stay.
Right.
No, interesting. And sorry, I guess to bring it a little bit further back to talk as like your products as a whole. So with your like creative process, then, you mentioned that for Tome of the Pact, you kind of like you could just tap away all the time. Um, is there like a particular part of the creative process that is your favorite?
Um, Depends on the project.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, for subclass stuff, just sitting, like, I don't necessarily do a lot of, there's not a lot of research or anything involved for a subclass. It's more just get a core idea, get excited by the core idea, sit down, you're like, okay, I need it's for this class, I need this level benchmark, this one and this one, and just kind of write down a couple of bullet points. I usually just do a little short bullet points or notes or things, then I'll pick those out, and I'll like they're based on the theme or whatever, and I'll pick those out and I'll drag those into different uh, level groups, or I'll just come up with a not necessarily number specific mechanic where it's like, oh, this ranger can, teleport X number of feet or do something.
Yeah.
And if it's a level 3 thing, I might make it less powerful but usable more often. If it's a higher level thing, it might be more powerful, can't use it as much. Just stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's always a fun time. Is just taking that core idea and making a bunch of concepts and then dragging those concepts into different level brackets and saying, okay, this is where I could make this work. And sometimes you end up swapping those around to make the subclass overall feel balanced.
No, it's like I said. So I'm like, again, I'm not much of like a subclass designer, but that is especially interesting to think about. Like, yeah, just having an ability that scales and could be placed anywhere. And is what like when it comes to like finding out when is like, okay, well, say take that like ranger with the teleport. How do you know when it feels right for it to be like a low level ability compared to like a high level ability? Is it just like a intuition or like a gut thing, or
There's a lot. There's a lot of gut feelings when I do subclasses.
yeah.
But overall, there are a pretty big, or it doesn't matter what class you're talking about. There's a pretty good variety of subclasses officially for all of the different classes. So most of the time, what I'm really going to do is create these core concepts. When it comes to adjusting the numbers, what I end up usually doing is taking a quick glance at most of the rest of the official subclasses and saying, okay, for a warlock, their level, I think level 10 feature is almost always a defensive one. So usually, if I'm kind of going with the flow, I want my level 10 warlock thing to be somewhat defensive in nature. And if I'm not doing that, I need to have a good reason for it. I need to think about, well, how is a warlock of this level going to defend itself otherwise? Have I given them something before now that is going to help them out in that way? Like, have they been generally more defensive from like a level 3 feature, or a level 1 feature or something like that? And if not, maybe I need to rethink what abilities I'm giving them. Maybe I need to scrap something. The biggest mistake that I see with a lot of subclass designs, and this is from brand new people and experienced people, is too many cool ideas. If you have a really cool core concept for a subclass, you can come up with so many abilities and functions and all kinds of mechanics for it, and you want to pack all of those in.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you'll see people who are they're doubling up on the level 10 feature. They have 2 different features or something, or they've really packed 2 features into one listing. It's like being, that's a problem of balance or power creep or whatever. And sometimes it's just, you know what, you hate to do it, but cut out one of these concepts and make the other one really, really good. Make the other one really shine, rather than trying to dilute a bunch of different ideas to make it work, or packing them all in there and making the class too powerful. So it's whew, yeah. Sometimes it's not easy.
No, honestly, that sounds like that was such like a fascinating and like a descriptive deep dive of like yeah subclass design. I think it all makes sense. I mean, like it can be tough to sort of like find out where these cool features go, and especially when like you have like such a strong concept that you can just envision. Like my mind goes always to Brittany's I think it's the Captain America subclass. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's the something of
I think I know what you're talking about.
yeah.
It's like a shield. Is it like a
There's like an Aarakocra with like a shield.
yeah.
And it's just like that's such a strong. You would just want to imagine like sort of flinging shields about and stuff like
Mhm.
that, and you kind of want almost every ability to be about like shield rebounds or like reflecting stuff out that
Mhm.
it can sometimes be tough to be like, well, maybe we should get like some passives in there, even though
Yeah.
it's not necessarily the most engaging thing. But that's how the format in the other subclasses are.
And that's always hard to want to do with a fighter. You can always think of cool martial things for like a fighter to do,
Yeah,
but then you got to remember that the samurai gives you proficiency in persuasion or artisans tools,
yeah,
or even the champion at least is really good at like swimming and climbing and feats of athleticism and strength and stuff. That stuff needs to be in there too. They need to have things, and sometimes those things can help in combat, like running and climbing and stuff is obviously something that can come up in a tactical combat situation.
yeah,
But sometimes you just got to get across this pit,
yeah.
and the champion fighter with 20 strength and an insanely long jump is the one who can do it. That's where those kind of features are going to shine.
No, and so I guess then so with just sort of like coming up with the concept and diving in on the adventure side of the spectrum, then is there any part of the process that you quite enjoy,
um
or is it more the same, just the idea and then slowly seeing it take shape?
and I think that's why it's adventures are more of a thing I've been working on, because I can't point out any one part of adventure writing that gets me super jazzed up, the way that taking 5-10 minutes to write a subclass will do, because that's subclass is very concentrated. Ooh, yeah, I got this cool concept, I made it work, and it's done, cool, got
Yeah,
it. um, Adventure writing is much more of a measured uh, pace. I would say that probably my favorite part would be things like, if I've made or have at least a general concept for like a map or something.
hmm,
When I was doing uh, Dragon Swindle, I created layer maps for the different villains, just the way that Dragon Heist does. And I used Dyson Logos, and I did like some combined maps, because you can kind of mix and match and
yeah,
kind of do some little Photoshop type things in there. And stocking those was a lot of fun, just having a printed out version and just doing little handwritten notes of here's maybe what I want to put here, and maybe this kind of encounter or something could be here, and it links into this one. That's really good for, I think, a good practice, at least for me, for any kind of dungeon or zone, is doing little dinky notes and things, because it's helpful to visualize how you're linking areas together, how you're not just you're not just walking into a room that has this weird arcane thing going on with no context for why it's in the dungeon.
yeah.
It's why is it here? If it's not from the current residents, what do they think of it? How do they interact with it? um and I don't know. Like, there's no particular thing. But I'd say if I really had to specify, it would be that kind of stuff. Just the little note taking, and like the little ideas I jot down for NPCs and things, and I kind of flesh those out. Um, and usually the way my process works is there's no first draft. There is the little bullet points and notes and little notations on a map, and
Mhm.
then there's a final product. It really is
Yeah,
just kind of, I stew over it, I think about it, and I just have all this stuff up here, and then I've got the little notes that are kind of guiding the thought process, and all the stuff in between it's just glue. It's just
Yeah.
filler. It's the stuff that is just tying the actual discrete ideas together, and that's not that's
Yeah,
just
no, I think I'm kind of saying it's like I think there is a notable difference in the way that I write an adventure if I have a map beforehand and if I don't. So like working with like a map that you've been provided with someone say, okay, it needs to work in this location. You know all the locations you have, and then it's like you can just it's almost like filling space. But when you don't have a map, it's more freeing, but then it's also like it's harder to sort of like visualize the space and make sure it's realistic because
I think you get more careful about like mentally visualizing
yeah,
the space, and that I think that's the same thing that you do with anything that doesn't have a map in an adventure, any encounter or interaction with an NPC, um, any of that stuff. You're trying to visualize the landscape, and sometimes it's literally a landscape. It's terrain, it's hazards and things and challenges, and sometimes it's just how do I think this conversation is going to go? What obvious questions do I need to make sure this NPC can answer? Um, what do I do if the party shoots them in the head?
yeah. I suppose at the end of the day, I'm very much accepting the fact that my ventures are there to be taken apart, and
Mm.
each DM is going to, and each DM and party are going to bring their own things to the table that even in my best day I couldn't predict. So
Yeah.
it's the
I only occasionally I've gotten a few people who have said they've run XYZ adventure.
yeah
I've seen like I had like 5 or 6 people message me over the last year or so with like, oh, I did this adventure, I did this adventure. At literally no point has anybody said I ran your adventure as it was written. The party followed along perfectly, and it went off without a hitch.
yeah
At no point ever. For Dragon Shard Sundown and the whole lightning rail, there's like a whole stretch that takes part on a lightning rail train.
yeah
They're like, well, I had to improvise because they detached the engine car from the rest of the train and just went off down the tracks. And
yeah.
I said, okay, well, I guess they won. Like the goal is to kind of find a way to kind of deal with the bad guys on the train and like get to where you're going. I guess if you leave them behind,
That's the
you have
solution.
succeeded. You've done
Yeah.
it. Uh, so yeah, you just have to accept that you're writing for this beautiful, perfect, idealized version of adventure that will never come to pass.
Yeah.
Um, but you just need to either answer obvious questions well enough, or you need to give a good enough sense of the environment or the NPCs or the situation where DM feels if when the party throws a curveball, the DM says, "Oh, I've got a good enough grasp about what's going on here that I can roll with this.
Yeah.
Like this adventure is communicating its ideas well enough to me that I can just say, yeah, sure, you go this way instead, you do
Yeah.
this instead, and still make it work."
I think that's why I kind of like the almost like the sandbox style of adventure writing, where you set up exciting locations with events that happen there.
Mhm.
In the sense that it's not necessarily like a series of events that have to happen. This is a cool location where fun things can happen, and regardless of what the players do, there's something to do or something to break. Um, but, but to flip it onto the other side, then, so we've spoken about some of the things you like across like subclasses of adventure writing. Are there any parts of the project that you don't necessarily enjoy?
Um, I probably wouldn't be the first person to say this, and I won't be the last, but like the last 10 to 15% of a project is pretty much the worst. Um, that can be finishing up layout,
Mhm.
that can be hunting down those last bits of art and stuff if you're doing your own layout to like fill in the space, or like you just really don't like how this column of text just doesn't have any art next to it, or like there's it just doesn't look right to you. On the writing side, that can be getting 90% of the way there, and then that last little 10% piece where you're like, okay, how do I tie maybe these two scenes together, or going back through and thinking, okay, am I missing anything?
Yeah.
Do I need to add a couple sentences in 5 different places throughout the adventure to really make sure everything's tied together, that it all it all works together cohesively. Um, and I think I've seen some other creators say pretty much the same thing,
Yeah.
where like that last little bit can be the worst because you really do have it written, you really do have it all there. Um, and that those last little pieces, it really is, you've done a 1,000-piece puzzle and there's 10 pieces left and you cannot figure out where the heck they are supposed to
Yeah.
go. You know, but
It's
if you
like that.
but if you keep at it, they will eventually have a space, and you will eventually finish it.
Yeah, it's tough. It's almost like it's not necessarily a physical thing. It's more like a mental thing to be like, okay,
Yeah.
well, this is almost done. I just need to sort of push through and get it done. And then you go through the whole process of creating the store page, getting it published out there, and just refreshing the royalty page every 3 to 5 seconds.
I've gotten a lot better about not doing that.
Yeah,
My last
I think with each project and stuff like that, you kind of get to the point where you throw it against the wall and then you leave. And
Yeah,
then
you just walk around like,
yeah,
whatever. I'll check it tomorrow. I'll check it later
yeah.
sometime. Yeah.
Um, no, interesting. No, yeah, you're 100%. You're not alone in that sentiment. And yeah, I don't think it gets easier with time. It's just eventually there's always that point where you're just like, I could be done with this now, and then you start having the gremlins of like, I've got another cool idea. We could
Oh,
start.
that's don't even. Oh, yeah. That's a whole other category of
Yeah.
distraction and problem. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like we could just listen. You and me, we could just start. We could start a new project right now. We can just start one, and it's like I shouldn't. It's like 10% left. But it's like, yeah, but there's a new one that we haven't even started yet, and we could have like 20% done today.
Right. Yeah. If there's the hot new position on the guild is going to be the person who shows up and says, "I can finish the last 5% of your project."
Yeah.
Exactly how you would have wanted it to have been done yourself.
The
Yeah,
finisher role.
yeah, the finisher, the last, the person who comes up with that pitch is going to be the next hot thing.
So, so I guess, are there any particular lessons that over the 3 years of publishing on the DMs Guild that you kind of wish you'd learned earlier, or to go back in time and speak to the Alex when he first started?
Um, I would say one would be lean into your strengths and work on your weaknesses. I mean, that's literally, I mean, what we're talking about, what I'm trying to do is,
Yeah,
there will be things that you feel like you are better at and things like you feel like you're not as good at. It's important to work on both. Um, and collaborations can be a really cool way to do that. It's daunting if you're not good at writing magic items, the concept of writing, you don't have to tell yourself, okay, I've got to write a 1,000 item supplement because I'm not good at it and I need to work on it.
yeah,
It sounds a lot easier if you manage to get onto a 1,000 item project and you're responsible for 10.
yeah,
uh, so I think one of the reasons collaborations um, are so attractive to new creators is because they can work with people who have been there for a while, learn from their experience, and it lets them work on a whole bunch of different stuff in very small amounts, which is much more manageable. It's much easier. So I would say, yeah, lean into your strengths, work on your weaknesses. Collaborations are a great way to do both of those things. Um, I would also say work on what you enjoy, which is not always necessarily the thing that you were good at. Caveat, that can be a different thing.
yeah,
Um, have fun with doing projects you're passionate about. Uh, as time has gone on, I've managed to I've come up with some freelance opportunities or ways to work with other creators for their projects, or work with some publishing companies and stuff like that, or work on small Kickstarter campaigns. That's work. Most of the time, pretty much 100% of the time, you're going to have a deadline.
mhm,
Most of the time, you're going to have a contract with a deadline.
yeah,
Um, that is work where you are writing for somebody else's vision, essentially. Um, So I've more and more treated the guild, come to treat the guild as, yeah, this is a professional environment for me, but it's also the place where I just work what I want to work on.
Yeah.
I like it's I, if I'm feeling a project on a particular day, I'll mess with that project on that particular day. Um, I have I have so much stuff written that is not released. I have like a 50-page regional guide, and I have like three pretty much 100% written adventures, and you know what, and some of that stuff I look back at and I'm say, mm, maybe I want to kind of rewrite this, or maybe this isn't quite here yet. Do I want to finish it right now? No. No, I haven't had like an idea that makes me go, ooh, oh wait, let me go back to that. I want to put that in this adventure.
Yeah.
Um, and you know what? Nobody's waiting for those. Nobody really even knows they exist.
Yeah.
So eventually I'll finish them, and I'll probably finish them and I'll probably release them. But until then, um, I'll work on the thing that is exciting and cool to me right now. And at some point, I will come back around and I'll have that idea to put into something that's 75% of the way there, and say that's the thing I needed to finish it. Um, that's my process,
No.
which is having 50 kind of projects that I pick at or whatever,
Yeah.
and just kind of letting it gestate. Or with the recent obsession with making bread, just letting the yeast,
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
let it do its thing for a while and check on it, and maybe you'll make some bread. It'll be fine.
Everyone's baking at the moment. Oh, I've realized I've gone very blurry. Allow me to
Uh,
refocus myself and come back into the. You know what? I'll just be blurry for a little bit. It'll sort itself out.
that's good. All right, good.
Yeah. It's kind of fascinating to hear about other people's creative process. Just because I'm gonna do a quick camera reset because
Okay, all right.
I was looking at myself and thinking this is very unprofessional. No, it's interesting to hear about, just because I think the way I am at, I think I do hyper focus on one particular product, or like I have my personal product, and then I have like collaborations or things on the side that I work for other people. And I think it would almost be like, if I had an adventure that was nearly done and I moved it to one side, it would be like, again, a gremlin. It would be a gremlin sat on my sofa, staring at me every 5 minutes, going, I could be out there right now. I'm waiting to get out. But no, but I imagine, like, from your, it's quite liberating, and I suppose it never quite feels like work, in the fact that you work on what you feel like, and as long as you've got that sort of motivation to sort of pull you through, it allows you to sort of chase sort of like creative, like, inspiration when they occur.
Yeah, and my process is not going to be workable for a lot of people. There's probably people who heard me say that and go, "You just have projects? You just have stuff sitting there. You have stuff sitting there that is layout ready, that you could just put into layout and release right now, and you haven't done it yet."
Yeah.
And that, I imagine there's people who hear that, and it's just that's impossible. They could
Or
never do it.
or like on the flip side, there's people that are like, oh, three done. Oh, I've
Right.
got like, dude, I
Right.
can't
Exactly.
move with all the projects I've got done at the moment.
Mhm.
It's a spectrum. I
Yeah.
imagine. No,
And it's really the thing is to find what works for you.
yeah,
Um, which is, when you're first starting out, it's the perfect time to, you know, to figure out what your own process is. And some people are really good self deadline setters,
mhm,
and that can be anywhere from a big scale, like I'm going to have this whole project done in 1 month from today. And maybe there's the same people or different people who say, you know what, I'm going to have this particular section of this thing done. I want to get this done today.
yeah,
This is my goal for today. Some people just that's just not how they operate.
mhm,
Um, and I will say that uh, as time goes on and you get more and more into the guild, and maybe you're doing more collaborations, maybe you are finding like hired work for Kickstarters or freelance, elsewhere. your plans for those deadlines need to learn how to flex,
Yeah.
especially with more and more you're going to learn that your guild stuff is going to have to flex for other people's guild stuff if you're doing collaborations or
Yeah.
you have deadlines and things. And it is pretty much a guarantee that once you agree to a collaboration, or once you say to yourself, good, I finally have that project, it is done, it is out the door, the next thing will show up.
Yeah.
It's a mixture of you will be looking for it and you'll see it and you'll find it, or it'll drop into your lap, or you'll just have that idea and say, oh, okay, cool, I guess I'm doing that. I guess I'm working on this now.
I mean, I suppose that's the nature of collaborations, is that you can't really necessarily predict when an interesting project will come along that you want to be involved in. It's easier when you're the project leader because you can decide when, but that's not how some of these things work. Where you just you see a cool project come along that you just jump on, and next thing you know, you're like, oh, I haven't opened that doc in 3 weeks now.
Right. That's where I've led. Have led sounds like I've finished leading. I've led two projects. One was Faithful of Eberron, which was a very archetype focused Eberron divinity deity related product that came out back when the Wayfinders was released, the guild specific Eberron setting book for 5e. And I was very much the trademark logo project leader on that, where it's like, okay, I'm sourcing with this art, I'm working with like 10 different people, here's their deadlines for stuff, here's our little Trello board where we're dragging little icons over as things get finished, and then the current thing that I'm trying to drag across the finish line, I'm the project leader in the sense that I contacted some people and I said, hey, this is a project I'm doing, and here's the list of all these sort of assignments you can do for it. If you're interested, put your name down. Your deadline is kind of sometime whenever.
Yeah.
Because we're all busy, and I just don't want to be the hard chargy project leader this time. It'll get done when it gets done. And if you end up not doing it, then I'll just do that part myself. And like that's how that project's going. Like and now we're at the point where anything from other people that I was going to get, I have now received. So now it's just like, now I am doing the part where it's like, okay, well, what didn't get done? Okay, well, here's some blank spaces. I'll put that stuff in. I'm doing the layout. I'm like doing the layout at the same time, chapter by chapter, and just kind of, it's like watching a raft made out of a book. Just kind of float. It's floating. It'll get there.
So funny enough, so that kind of leads into like one of the later questions, like looking to the future then. Are you happy to like share like any of the projects that you're currently working on, or what we can sort of expect on the DMsGuild within the future TM?
Yeah, so the thing that I'm referencing and working on right now is Esmeralda's Encyclopedia of Evil.
Ooh.
Which is it's like all my best projects, it was a Twitter joke that I made that I then 6 months later went, that would be cool though. So that if you actually went from idea conception to now, it's been in production for like 2 years. It's really more been in production for a few months at a time. Here and
like
there,
spread out, like
spread out
2
over
years
time.
Sounds like a long time, but it's if you condensed it.
And I'm trying to finally get it finished with layout and all the stat blocks, the stat blocks being
that 10%.
The stat block thing is a big 10%. And it's I'm very excited about it. It's just one of those things where it's definitely a passion project that I also think could do well. You don't know. Some days you'll release the coolest thing you've ever made and nobody will buy it. This is how it happens sometimes. But the concept is that I really love Vola's Guide to Monsters. I really love Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. I think they're two sides of the same coin when it comes to um, using, like, it's not just a monster book, it's how to functionally make a stat block into a thing that you interact with in a campaign.
Hmm.
So like Volos is very good at um, turning a creature into sort of like a campaign arc
Yeah.
or like a villain, or and then Mordenkainen's is very good at focusing on very broad scale, almost like your campaign session zero sort of lore.
Yeah.
And here's a bunch of stat blocks for stuff that could be like the final end boss
Mhm.
of that campaign, CR 23, 24,
There's some
Demon Lord and stuff like that.
beefy things in there.
So Esmeralda's is kind of that concept. It's a chapter by chapter exploration of different creature types.
Nice.
So one of them is I think the big daddy chapters are especially lycanthropes is a chapter.
Very nice.
Vampires, of course,
Yeah.
is a chapter. Mummies is one that I'm really proud of, really hyped up for.
So I imagine then it's not necessarily set in Ravenloft, but with heavy inspiration drawn from that.
Yeah, a lot of kind of horror archetype monsters are in there.
Yeah.
But it's also focusing on um, some, so there's like some sort of like, I guess you would call it boss content.
Hmm.
There's a chapter on Elder Evils with
Ooh.
three different, I believe it's Atropos, Caius, the worm that walks,
Yeah.
and Father Lemic are statted in there, and they are, CR 25 to 30, just
Scary.
monsters. Yeah.
Scary things.
There's a chapter on the Oberith, which were kind of dropped in 5e, but they were
Mhm.
like the demons before demons.
Yeah.
Dagon is one. There's like three or four different, CR 23 to 24 Oberith in there. They're big boss campaign enders right there. And then you'll have, the werewolf chapter where it's, the stat blocks in that chapter are mostly kind of filling in CR gaps or filling in more roles for lycanthropes. Like, oh, here's a pack leader. Here's a werewolf that's more focused on like ritual magic and stuff like that, which, just kind of identifying where those empty spaces are
Yeah.
in challenge rating for different monster types. Like the mummy has, I think I'm doing a couple of variants or like lesser stat blocks for like a mummy warrior, um, or like uh, here's an alternative mummy lord that uses warlock spell casting instead of, I think
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
like cleric is what it currently uses, something like that. Just like all these different little, functional stat blocks and tools and things like that. And then the actual chapters are considerations of like what's in the lair,
Yeah.
what does this organization look like. The vampire has an actual like bonds, flaws, ideals type table of
Nice.
like how can I make this feel like a dynamic uh, character and not just a bunch of health and damage that the characters are going to fight. So yeah, like I said, it's just that I really love Mordenkainen's, I really love Volos. So the idea of, a functional monster book,
Yeah.
not just a stat block, but how do I use this? What do I do with this?
No, it honestly sounds like yeah, you've taken sort of like the best parts of what made both these books. Like I think they're very well received. Like so, I think
Yeah.
it makes
Oh
sense to
yeah.
sort of take those parts and work it into like a new product and give Esmeralda a podium as well.
Yeah.
um, so I guess as well. So to keep looking to the future, then, do you have like a particular like dream project that you're not necessarily working on now, but it's just something that you would love to work on at some point?
Um, I I would say that Esmeralda's is the dream project for right
Cool.
now.
Yeah,
Like
that's all.
it really is the thing that I've been, and that's one of the reasons I've taken so long on it, is because I never want to feel like I'm forcing myself to finish a section.
Mm-hmm.
I never want to feel like I have to shove this across the finish line and get it released so I can like make my investment back, or like I gotta, yeah, like I really want it to be good. You
Yeah.
know, like I really love the concept. I'm really proud of the work that's put into it. I really love the stuff that other creators have written for it. It's like, man, I want this to be really good,
Yeah.
and I want it to I want my excitement and like passion for the subject material and the creatures and the weird cool stuff. I want the yeah, I'm excited about the idea of helping people turn these monsters or like these categories of monsters into campaign villains or arc villains. Like I want my excitement over that idea to come through. Um, so like yeah, that's kind of the dream project right now. And then
I was
there's
gonna.
obviously
I
there's
was gonna.
always
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say just yeah. Your excitement of the project definitely comes through when you were talking about it.
yeah.
Like it's infectious. I'm hyped. So,
I mean, there's always like the adventure ideas that I've had for like since I started.
yeah.
I really and sometimes those change over time. I think
Mhm.
one my a dream adventure idea that I've had for a long time is a slot focused adventure.
Ooh.
Because super they're not utilized very often. They're also very hard to use, I think. There's a SLAT chapter in Esmeralda's because I had to write a chapter on these guys,
Yeah.
include some more variants and stuff, but also just address like so they're chaos, but they're also kind of some of them are intelligent
Yeah.
and like
And
some
they.
it's kind of the Dark Knight Joker problem where it's like, ooh, I'm chaotic and crazy. Like, yeah, but you clearly have plans and like goals and you do stuff,
Because
so like how do you it's easy to watch a movie where that happens, but how do you run a very chaotic um antagonist or group of antagonists? How do you get into that mindset?
and
Like how do you run these creatures?
Slards are the ones that they make more of themselves by killing you, and or you
Yeah, like
turn they
the
turn you
red
into more.
ones. Yeah, the red ones have the tadpoles that grow over the course of a couple of months, and the blue ones have like the chaos disease that will transform you over the course of several days. So like it's this exponential growth kind of thing. And I've always wanted to do an adventure with that. And I've had a lot of ideas for it, and now um, with some of the stuff that other people have made, like the gosh, I'm embarrassed. I just blanked on the name. I'm gonna totally look it up in the
No, it's
middle of
fine.
this.
Like I said,
Um,
I think this has been done multiple times where there's so many
yes,
awesome things out there.
to do this.
So I'm going to assume it's a Slard based product.
No, I was thinking of. I was just trying to make sure I got the. I want to give a shout out to the creators correctly. The 5e solo game books
Oh, I see.
peeps who have done they did that series, yeah, Death Knight Squire, Tyrant of Zentil Keep, Citadel of the Raven, and The Tortured Land. Really, there's some people who pioneered solo adventures,
Mhm.
and now with Dragon of Ice Spire Peak, a lot more people have gotten into one player, one DM adventures,
Yes.
and more people have gotten into sidekicks as a way for a solo or duo party to um, to play through much more kind of there's just kind of something different about the way you play an adventure as a solo as a
Like
solo.
intimate, isn't it? It's like
Yeah,
yeah.
and I've really wanted to do a slot adventure for a long time, and seeing other creators pioneer more and more one-on-one adventures or play by yourself, like kind of choose your own adventure style.
Yeah.
I've kind of pivoted towards wanting to do a slot adventure, um, probably as like a solo,
Mhm.
where the concept I've always wanted to do was a kind of a mix of Alien, because I love
No.
Alien, super obsessed with Alien,
Yeah.
and Amnesia, those game series,
The Dark Descent and
where it's kind of you wake up and you're not really sure what's going on, kind of, which is not just an Amnesia thing. That's a trope that
yeah.
exists. But I really wanted to do you wake up, you're not really sure what you're in the middle of. You realize it's this sort of slod invasion or outbreak essentially, and you realize that you have a slot tadpole inside
Nice.
you. and like you are trying to figure out, how do I get out of here? How do I survive? Do kind of a very sort of solo, almost horror
Yeah.
focused adventure where you are trying to navigate your way through this, you know, this place in the middle of this SLAD outbreak, and not get killed by SLAD, and not, try to figure out some way to survive the fact that at any point could have this little chest burster, pop
Yeah.
out. And,
Yeah.
that's, so I've gone from this sort of like, oh, this general idea for an adventure to a very, very different type of adventure. And if I had forced myself to just write something when I first had the idea, I'm sure I would have a slot adventure out there now, but I wouldn't have the idea I have now,
Yeah.
which in a lot of ways I'm more excited about, and I'm more interested in kind of exploring, because that's that's completely different experience.
No,
Um,
it is a very cool idea. I think, yeah, the idea of like a Slard being essentially the alien is a parallel that I didn't think I was going to be making today, but it just makes so much sense. It just that's how it would be. no, no, it just no, awesome, and yeah, no, those again, those both sound like really really awesome projects, and obviously the idea of them being dream projects is, they're not going to be coming out next week, but
right.
it's cool to know that they're somewhere there on the horizon. To sort of bring the our hour, this hour has flown by. Thank you so much for this. But to bring the sort of our chat to a close, you mentioned this like just by doing a shout out of like the people doing the one-on-one adventures and stuff like that. But are there anyone in the or any multiple people in the DMsGuild community that particularly inspires you? I do see this. This
How
is
much
why
time do we have?
this is my favorite and least favorite question in the both way, just because like I know how evil it is, and I just get to sit here
It's awful, because I could sit here and name so many people, and then always and it's gonna be that the spirit of the stairs thing, where I'll hang up the Zoom call and go, oh my god, I can't believe I forgot to mention this person.
So the thing that I always say is the fact that I'm quite strict in keeping my podcast quite short. So if people listening don't hear their names, it's because I cut it.
Blame it, yeah, blame it
Yeah,
on,
there you go.
on
So
the
it's me, not you.
um there are people that I've worked with consistently who are really amazing. Jeff Stevens is the first name that pops into my head. Like I said, he was the person who reached out to me when I first released something. Jeff is just that super positive energy guy who makes such a big point of finding new creators,
Yeah.
and bringing them into collaborations and stuff. He's just so amazing about that. Incredibly supportive. Um, he's obviously, and the thing is, like, that he proves that that's a formula that you can succeed with, because he has succeeded as a creator by working with other creators and bringing in new talent.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, man. um Shout outs to Chris Waltz, who has kind of become my go-to editor for a lot of stuff
Nice.
on a lot of projects. I use him for several adventures and stuff now. I mean, like, I consider him a friend, and he's easy to work with, and he finds my stuff very easy to edit, which is excellent.
The perfect cycle.
So, and he works with Cubicle 7, so like he's actually like an industry editor at this point now, and that he came up through the guild. He's an awesome success story for guildies. Oh my gosh, this is terrible, because I even had like this whole list of names of like, yeah, I remember to talk about these people, and as soon as you ask that question, it's gone. Yeah. It's all gone. I mean, there's people that are really just amazing and inspiring with the stuff they do. And obviously, we mentioned earlier, JVC Perry,
yeah,
super amazing creator. I mean, he's like the if I had a clone in the UK who was good at who focused more on adventure writing stuff instead of subclass stuff, I would want him to be like Josh Perry, because he just completely busts his ass all the time.
Yeah.
Amazing work. Oliver Clegg has the absolute trash panda energy that I try to harbor in my heart every single day.
Yeah.
Just like just the stuff that they make, and like their personalities, and just they're really. I
Yeah.
can list more people, but like I'll keep it
Yeah.
short.
Yeah.
We'll keep it a group, but just really just amazing people.
No,
Like,
I think that's why I always say, I always like, almost like consoling, to sort of say that, like, the great thing we have about the DMsGuild community is that there's so many great people. I mean,
right.
it's just the nature of the thing that, I'm sure, when it comes around to Christmas, I'll do like the thank you episode where I just list names for an hour, which I'm sure, will be very interesting to most people. But yeah, no, we're fortunate enough to be in, a close knit, like, still relatively, like, despite the community growing, it is still relatively small. And it's kind of nice to see, new names pop up and have huge success, and the same sense of, like, people who have been, working for like 2 to 3 years and just consistently churning out content. There's inspiration to be found all over the place, really. And that felt too wholesome to come out of my mouth.
Why? Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's good.
No, it's, it goes straight against my British dour sensibilities of rain and um, but to bring this podcast to I guess a close and an end. Thank you so much for taking the time, Alex. This has been a blast. If people want to find out about all these amazing products coming out in the near future, where would be the best place for them to find out about that?
I would say pretty much has to be Twitter. I am at a Clippinger. It's just like it sounds.
Yeah.
But I usually that's usually where I'm gonna do any announcements about new stuff that I've released. I'll randomly post about stuff that I'm currently working on. I'll go on weird tangents and foul mouth rants and all kinds of fun stuff. So yeah, generally that's kind of my not quite professional presence online. And then other than that, just watch the DMsGuild and I'll show up there eventually.
Yeah, as I say, I think the day that I'm, vaguely professional on Twitter is the day that a part of me has died. So I think it's just, it's the nature of the beast. But no, actually, so before I do forget, I do have one more question. How do you end a podcast?